Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Well, all right, and welcome to an amazing episode. We have such a fantastic guest here today. How are you doing, Clementine?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am doing well. I am excited about our conversation today. I am just amazed at all the incredible stories of overcoming trauma. And every time it's like sort of like I'm being navigated towards the right people to pull out the stories to help other people, to inspire and to encourage, because we're all in this together, right? Trauma
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not our fault. It's an injury. It's not something that we asked for. It's not something that it's an injury, and it is something that we can recover from. And so, I want to talk with you and walk through this journey of recovery, and and share some of your personal insight on it. Clementine Shakuri.
yeah,
I
Security.
got it right. Okay. Wonderful. So welcome to the
Thank you,
conversation.
thank you.
So you are a limited licensed social worker and therapist specializing in children and family therapy. So I'm sure not only in your personal life, but in your profession, walk through some of the traumas, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So we always get things kicked off by asking, what does Get Trauma Informed mean to you?
Yeah, well, getting trauma informed to me is just being in a space where trauma is uh aware, people are aware of trauma and how it can show up in human beings. So being trauma aware is to, or informed, similar is just to know how can it's recognizing trauma when you see it.
That's important. That I think that's one of the issues that we face, because oftentimes, even when you've suffered through trauma, I have so many people, countless people, after they hear an episode, they identify with the trauma in that specific area, and just coming to the awareness that, wow, I've been suffering in trauma. I didn't even know how it, like you just said, how it showed up in my life, how it actually, had such an impact on my decisions, and
Right.
then on the outcomes. We're responsible for the consequences at that point, but trauma is real. So, and that's one of the reasons why Get Trauma Informed podcast exists, is to bring that awareness and to help all of us to understand that it's not something that we can ignore. It
Yeah.
is something that is progressive, and it will get worse if we don't address it. So I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you're joining the conversation today. You want
Yeah.
to
Thank you
share?
so much for having me.
Yeah, it was something how we even met, just talking. And that's what I do. I talk to people, I meet people, and I have to feel some kind of connection or tug, even to approach you about it. And this is how I'm really understanding and walking out that, not just, and my audience is very aware of my trauma story. And if you're not,
Mhm.
everybody go back to the other episodes where I've been sharing bits and pieces of, how this whole trauma, it wasn't something I selected either, to be in this work. But it has been so rewarding to come into all of the different understandings, the modalities. Even my certifications was because I was searching for recovery for myself, and now being able to share it with the world is actually an incredible experience. So
Mhm.
just you can just start out by telling us a little bit about, have you faced trauma?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all face trauma, just in different ways, you know. So I, well, when you first experience trauma, you don't have a name for it until later on when you're an adult or older, and you look back and you have these thoughts that, oh, that was trauma, and that was me reacting to that traumatic experience or that traumatic event. And I have come to a conclusion that my childhood was really traumatic. Um, just growing up in or being born in a war zone where people are fleeing for their lives and just yeah, just safety, constantly in survival mode um and not thinking about food or just that you're thinking about finding somewhere safe to
Right.
be. And my family ended up in a refugee camp in Rwanda, East Africa, and we lived in a refugee camp for about 5 years. And just living in the refugee camp itself is traumatic.
Right.
And at that time, as a kid, I didn't think I didn't think that that was normal. That was normal to me. So I
Hmm.
didn't I see anything wrong with it until later on, when I looked back and thought that's not normal to live in a refugee camp. And the refugee camp is like the way I describe it to my friends here is it's like going camping forever,
Oh,
you know,
wow. Hmm.
just not having resources that you need and relying on the government to give you food, and just not having your needs being met. And the main goal of being in a refugee camp is to potentially be resettled into another country, which is how my family moved here to the United States. So we moved here as refugees from East Africa.
Wow, that's something. I'm sure, and we're doing a series on PTSD and complex
Mm,
PTSD. And what you described is some of what some of our military veterans talk about, being in a war zone and that affecting them to that, that deep level or degree because you don't have a sense of safety. And so in that PTSD or complex PTSD, that's one of the very important modalities, if you will, is to or places is to get to a place of safety. So where you can now feel safe. I think, I try to paint the picture so that people can really understand their normal is not the normal of somebody that suffered through like severe trauma. When
yeah.
you suffer through severe trauma, you don't have that sense of safety. It's not automatic. Whereas somebody that's not lived that life has this automatic I guess I want to say silo of safety around them where they're not
Yeah.
even aware of being unsafe or what it feels like, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And PTSD is probably the main diagnosis for a lot of refugees because they go through similar experience of like being in a war zone and not having safety, and just being constantly in survival mode. So post-traumatic stress is one of the main diagnoses that a lot of former refugees just have to deal with and live with.
Right, right. And see, and that's a part of what the Get Trauma Informed movement and community is all about, is helping us to understand that, yes, the trauma happened to us. And now there are ways for us to live a fulfilled life without always being stuck in that, well, this is something that happened to me. And this is my lot in life, understanding and myself personally in recovery mode from complex PTSD. I learned the modalities to help keep me in a safe space, to help
Mhm.
keep me and I had to really understand and unravel everything. I had to understand and come into the awareness that, recovery is a lifelong effort for me. It's an additional package that came along with me being put into the traumatic situations that I was in. And so
Yeah.
now recovery is my responsibility. So that's the line, that's
Yeah.
the tagline here. Trauma was not your fault. However, recovery is your responsibility. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that you're talking about the PTSD that refugees suffer through because our programs help to pull out those self-care practices and have so we can have a self-care plan so that we can and I say we because I'm a part of this. This is actually my community.
Mhm.
Being able to say, look, together we can help each other to feel safe. Together we can make sure that are you drinking your water, because hydration is important for your mental, for your mental
Yeah,
stability, right? All of these
yeah.
healthy things that we take for granted.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that you said recovery is your responsibility, because that's so true. It's so easy to just have a reason of why you're acting the way you're acting, and it's valid. Your feelings are valid. But then what do you do to cope? You know, because like once my family arrived back here to the United States, I think that's when the trauma manifests because you're away from that space where you were in survival mode and you're in a safe space now. And it's so hard to shut off the brain and live in and actually believe that you're in a safe space. Um, so because even though you're not in the refugee camp anymore, we're still struggling to make it because of our past, because
Right.
of how I was brought up.
Right. And what I think is I really want us to start to understand is that it's not like a switch that you can switch on and switch off.
Yeah,
It's actually deeper than that. It actually gets into a cellular level, into how your brain now functions and operates.
yeah,
And so now you're not only, it's sort of like in silent suffering in a silo, but you're fighting yourself as well. The silo is no
yeah,
longer there, but you are fighting yourself, and then you still have the regular day-to-day things that you have to deal with as well. I
yeah,
really want people to understand that, because we can look at somebody like myself that have gone through and is still working in this recovery, and 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 it's hard to understand, like, you don't look like something is going on because it's one of those what do you call it, invisible scars.
yeah.
And so some of the triggers, and like I teach and help people to understand what the triggers are, because sometimes, for this weekend, like I said, I had such an amazing birthday week because I'm finally able to now enjoy, and I'm finally able to breathe. And this is something that if we don't constantly work on, if we don't keep that forefront in our mind, we can relapse.
Hmm.
And so I want people to understand that they can have an amazing, incredible life. And like I said, just like over the weekend, I was able to enjoy my grandchildren. I didn't have that fear just that's always sitting on your shoulder, that's tapping on your shoulder. I didn't have any of that. But that's
Yeah,
because I practice my self-care. And that's the sleeping, right? That's the eating properly. That's the getting the proper exercise, is setting up a self-care plan and actually not being afraid to put yourself first.
yeah, absolutely. So because I work with kids, I use the analogy of a toolbox. So we all have toolboxes
Yes.
and we collect tools as we go through life, and our toolbox can get bigger, as we collect more tools through our life. And you're doing self-care, drinking water or going for a walk, that is a tool. That's a
Yes.
tool you have in your toolbox, and you always have it, and you can collect tools as you go. So when you meet with someone who has been through traumatic experiences, can ask them, okay, what's in your toolbox? And
Yes.
you have tools in your toolbox. If not, let's get some tools. And some tools work better than others, right? So which tools do you like the most? Because your tools and my tools might look a little different, and that's
Yes.
okay. Because the way we experience trauma is totally different.
I'm so glad that you pointed that out. It is amazing how many people compare trauma. You can't compare it, because my brain is going to do something totally different, or respond to, react to trauma totally different than your brain is.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that people don't get. I've had people compare, my trauma started from the womb. And so I've had trauma through domestic violence. I had trauma through, car accident, trauma through divorce, trauma through, all of these different traumas. And some folks will say, well, I had a car accident and bounced right back. That's because you didn't have complex PTSD before you had the accident, right?
Yeah.
And then you didn't, so you had a different environment growing up. You had all of these different atmospheres and different what am I trying to say? I lost my thought with it, but you have all of these different uh contributing factors, I want to say, to how you or your body responded to trauma. And some people can be in an accident and suffer the physical issues, but have and just get back up and really don't have the trauma that people face in car accidents. But I'm so glad that you pointed that out about different people and different traumas.
Mhm.
So and so how did your trauma influence you going into the world of therapy and the world of social work?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. So my undergraduate was in elementary education. I just love kids and they're just so innocent and yeah, kids are amazing.
Yes,
And I
yes,
like being around them because I feel the happiest when I'm with young children. So I wanted to be a teacher. So I got my undergraduate in education and I taught for like 1 year, second grade. Um, and then I discovered social work as a teacher. I didn't know the world of social work.
right,
Um, just being first generation and not having like resources available to you, there's just like a whole world that I didn't know. So when I discovered social work, I took a pause and I got a job in the social services to see if I like it. And if I did, I was going to go back to school to get my master's in social work and work as a social worker. But as I worked as a refugee case manager at Bethany Christian Services, I was there for a year and I experienced a horrible car accident in 2019, in February. And it was severe because I was in the hospital for a long time and I had so many injuries and I was not supposed to make it. Um, I think that's what that changed me. That
yes,
that changed me. Um,
yes.
I had a brain injury, and I broke my C1 and C2, so I was internally decapitated. That's what the doctor called it.
Oh, wait.
Um, so I had like several injury. I broke my jaw, I broke my femur. It was just like a lot going on, and my healing was miraculous because it just didn't make sense to
Right.
how I was recovering so fast. And I became so fascinated by the human brain. Just the fact that my brain was broken and it it has like the power to heal. And
Yes.
I also have a part to play in it, but there are things I can do that can help my brain become healthier and sharper and stronger. So that's how I started going to therapy. I started going to therapy in college. Only just, I started going to therapy in college because it was free.
Yes. Okay.
And I just knew my childhood was not a normal childhood based on people I met, and I'll share my childhood story. And again, this goes back to comparing traumas because they'll tell me, oh, that's horrible childhood. That's nothing compared to me. And I don't my the point of sharing my story is not to compare. So I started seeing a therapist to just process my childhood and see how it affects me and what traumas I'm holding on to from my childhood. So that's the first time I did therapy. And then after my accident, I rejoined therapy because of my injuries and I was just like suffering. mentally. I was dealing with a lot of just depression and anxiety, and obviously PTSD from the accident. And I was just like fascinated, just how, just like you said, simple as drinking water, just
Yes.
like that big effect that has on you, or taking a walk in nature, or just working out, you know. I've always loved working out, but working out, knowing the benefits of working out, it makes a huge difference. Um, and when I was seeing my therapist, I went back to school for social work, and when and I'm also like a rebel sometimes because I was told not to even think about going back to school because just because of the work and how like rigorous it is and how it would be too much on my health and mentally. I did it anyways, and during grad school, I remember taking um, clinical diagnosis, so learning about mental illnesses, and I was just fascinated by that. And every time we went to the simulation lab for class to do therapy, like mock therapy, I always got amazing feedback from my professors and just like the fake clients.
Yes.
Um, and I never really thought about doing therapy because I wanted to work in the school as a school social worker or just work in a school in general on some level. But then when I graduated, my job just happened to be the first job I applied for was therapy, and I got the job. And like, this is great. This works out perfect, and I love it. So
Right.
that's how I got into therapy, and I think I have the personality for it because I I I have the personality for it, and I think I have the skills a therapist need to have, and I want to grow as well because this is my first year working as a therapist. So, and I'm open. I want to learn more. I'm just hungry for knowledge,
Yes.
which is the confirmation that I am in the right field.
Congratulations on all of your success. You know,
Thank you so much.
you've just shared so much with helping other people to understand that even when you suffer, even like you said, a closed head injury, like myself, you don't have to stop at okay, it's over for me, basically, right? No,
Yeah,
you can keep moving forward, and your brain, your body has the ability to rejuvenate
yeah,
and to start refiring up neurons, you know, and it just has the it just has the ability. But I think one of the triggers that you just said is mindset. You have to have a positive mindset towards, I can do this. My body can do this. And the more, you tell your body that it can, and the more positive that you feed your body, it just ignites something on the inside of you. And of course,
absolutely.
we have, different tools, like you said, in your toolkit. We have different tools that can help us to do that. And that's what this community is all about, helping us with the tools. And I love what you said about loading the toolbox, because we talk about tools all the time, but having the different tools that'll work for you. Because I've said it over and over. My tools may not work for you. Like, I love stretching. I love,
Yeah,
riding the bike, and just certain things that help me. But we all have to discover our own set of tools that's going to work.
yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
we do,
And to
we,
add to what, can
mhm,
I add a little bit to
yes.
what you said about mindset?
Hmm.
It's really important to just know yourself and um, understanding how far you can go and push yourself because there are times where an expert would tell you, oh, you can't do that because they are an expert and they know what they're saying. And just because someone is telling you that you're not capable of something, it does not mean that you're not capable of something, even if
Yes.
they are expert in it. And an
Yes.
example is with my physical therapist, when I first started doing physical therapy, because I went from not being able to walk at all
Right.
to walking to just even attempting to take a step. And my goal was to run again. That was my end goal. I wanted to walk again and be able to run at the pace I used to run before my accident. And they just thought that was bizarre. And the fact that I was had that as a goal was such a big goal for me. And they didn't tell me that it was impossible, but they also told me like, okay, let's set realistic goals. And which I agree as a therapist, yeah, we set realistic goals, but don't let anyone um uh, discourage you or like bring you down a little bit or bring you back to reality.
Yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes, yes. This is the
so
same
yeah,
thing. Yeah, this is the
yeah,
same thing to me. They told me the same thing, and I kept saying, "But this is not my destiny." And they kept saying, "If you don't accept where you are, you're not going to get better." And I kept saying, "If I accept what you're saying, I'm not going to get better." So every
absolutely.
year, I went further. Every time they test me, they did an 8 hour. I can't even think of the name of the exam now, but it was an 8 hour exam, and every year they were like you've surpassed the plateaus, you surpassed it, and that was because every year I kept telling myself like that little engine that could in the little
Yeah,
nursery rhyme. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. The more and more, because I too had to. I was on crutches and I was on a cane. I was on a walker. All of these things, and I said, nope, I think I can. I think I can. And after a while, it's like, I know I can. I know I can. Because you start reaching those goals
yeah,
that you've set for yourself. So
hmm,
absolutely, absolutely. Like
yeah.
you've told us how trauma has empowered you and inspired you because you just kept going. And I think that's absolutely amazing. What would you say to someone that was faced with trauma?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine driving down the road, enjoying a beautiful day when suddenly a tree jumps out in front of your car. Crash! In an instant, your life is flipped upside down, both physically and psychologically. That was my reality. I'm Liz Blanding, a certified holistic wellness and trauma recovery coach. In a time when, according to the National Center for PTSD, the epidemic of trauma is on the rise, 70% of adults in the U.S. have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. That's 223.4 million people who could benefit from support on their journey to recovery. To address this, I launched the Get Trauma Informed podcast in March 2024. Our podcast offers free information, resources, expert advice, and stories of those who have overcome trauma and shifted from surviving to thriving. The podcast has the capacity to reach hundreds of thousands of people. I believe that by partnering with the Get Trauma Informed podcast, we can provide critical support to many more people who need it. Trauma was not their fault, but recovery is their responsibility. And with your support, we can help them to achieve it. Thank you for considering the partnership opportunity. I look forward to the possibility of working together to make a significant impact on trauma recovery. Email us at info@oasiswellnessctrs.com or contact us at 616-320-0703. Now we will return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation.
Well, first acknowledge it, So sometimes we try to, I don't know, maybe put a blanket over the trauma and ignore it or like not go back to it because we don't think it's a big deal, but it is a big deal. Um, I have a lot of siblings and we've been through similar trauma and they affected us differently. Um, but I thought something was wrong with me because it was bothering me more than it was bothering them. So learning that it's okay that this is bothering me, and that goes to whole comparing trauma. It's
Yes,
you don't have to compare trauma, and if it's bothering you, it's valid, and there's nothing wrong with you, and it's valid that you're having these feelings, and it's okay to talk to someone, a professional about it. Because
absolutely.
sometimes we're in denial, like, oh no, 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 that's not me, or I don't feel that, or I just, and we're being hard on ourselves. Like, why am I feeling this way? I'm so this, I'm so this. So okay, so something I would say to someone who's experienced trauma is, one, this is probably the most important thing, one to me, is just be kind to yourself, and be nice to yourself too, and like
Yes.
to yourself, because how we react to trauma, sometimes it makes us be upset with ourselves for the way we're reacting to it. But it's
Yes.
valid. The way you're reacting to it is valid. So understanding that and actually believing that, because it can be our biggest enemy. So being nice to yourself and seeing yourself as human and having compassionate and kindness and treating yourself like a human that you are, that's one, and that's probably the most
Yes.
important. And also know that you deserve to heal, you deserve growth, you deserve this, you are deserving, and you deserve to live a life of happiness, of pain, of free from pain. You deserve to know tools. So putting yourself in that position, that you are deserving and actually believing it, and that's when you can start taking steps towards healing. It's really hard to seek help when you don't feel like you need it or deserve it.
That's so important. Thank you for validating so many concerns that, and also I always say, give yourself grace. And you said
Yeah,
it, don't be so hard on yourself because we beat ourselves up first. We beat ourselves up, beat
yeah,
ourselves up, beat ourselves up. So I think that's really important. And that's why, again, we're out here making it bringing it to the forefront about awareness is important that we're aware as well. The other
yeah.
thing too is that we have an event coming up on the 25th of July from 6 to 7, and it is a session not only just for military PTSD or civilian complex PTSD, but it's for anybody that has suffered trauma, and they can go to the Get Trauma Informed page on Facebook to get information about attending that. I think it would be so great to just have that whole conversation. And we also have VIP tickets for that as well. It's free general admission and $47 for the VIP. With the VIP, you get the general admission. My book just dropped. It's called The Pathway to Trauma Recovery. That's book number 3. Amazing,
Amazing.
amazing stories of different types of trauma, people that have overcome trauma, and that they share their stories on how they overcame the trauma. Because that's one of the things that to put in our toolbox, reads or books that actually speak to our specific trauma to help us hear in our own voice as we're reading, but in the author's voice to let you know that they was able to overcome trauma and become an international public published author. So
Wow.
that's another thing that's coming up as well. So
Amazing.
yeah, so I'm really excited that you were brave enough to come on and share, some of the story of what you went through as far as how you were able to overcome your trauma, and just reinforcing that, there's tools out there available for us to help ourselves to overcome trauma. And if you did it and I did it when the odds were totally against us, then they can overcome trauma as well. And
Mhm.
have a supportive community like the Get Trauma Informed community to help
Yeah,
them overcome that as well and understand that we can feel safe. We can
yeah,
enjoy life without that fear bubble tapping us
yeah,
or fear tapping us on our shoulder. Is there anything
yeah.
else that you would like to leave us with today? Because we so appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yes, there is one thing. Just being a woman of color and in this field, I know there's a huge stigma when it comes to mental health in general, or mental illness. And my I like to I would like to see that being just the stigma to just be eradicated, because that hinders us from progress, especially in the Black and Brown communities. We know there is trauma. We know there's these things we're dealing with, and sweeping it under the rug is not a solution. And
Yes.
also coming to and seeking for help does not make you weak. in fact, it makes you strong and it shows that self-love that I'm talking about, that you deserve to have a life of happiness and of freedom. You deserve that. And I think that some of us think, oh, it's not a big deal. It's nothing. We don't have to talk about it. But let's just talk about it. Let's have a conversation and let's break the stigma. Um, that's
Thank
that's
you.
the last thing I have to say.
No, thank you. You said so much. I'm so grateful because you talked about that stigma, because that is one of the reasons why it's so hard for our community to come together and talk about the PTSD. And I'm saying the community that's been afflicted with trauma. You know, the statistics show that over 70% of the population have experienced some form of trauma, and 8% being that with PTSD or complex PTSD. So with those numbers like that, I think part of the reason why we don't come forward is because of the stigma, because of mental health, and if we're not having these conversations. So that's why the Get Trauma Informed movement is on the rise, and people are starting to become more aware, because it's like, wow, this is a trauma. When they hear the different stories, they understand, wow, this is not just something that, I can stop being so hard on myself. This is not something that just happened to me, but it's happened to other people. And look,
Yeah,
you were able to go through all that you went through, from your childhood all the way up to the accident. And even with the different doctors in your ear telling you, wait, hold on, let's take some
yeah,
baby steps. And you're like, wait, no, I'm ready for a giant step. I'm ready for a
yeah,
leap. My destiny is way over here. You're seeing this right here. I don't see that, right? Putting the blinders on. When we say definitely take care of yourself, definitely listen to your body, but also give yourself grace to grow.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yes, I look forward to you being a part of our community with your hands on. I so appreciate you. And I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit and have this conversation with me. It's
Yeah,
reaching many, many people. So, again, thank you so much. I look
yeah,
forward to you
thank
coming back
you.
on again.
Yeah, I love to. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you. Bye for now.
Bye.
It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you are collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.